Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Climate Gentrification panel. We are so happy to have you and be able to share more about this really pressing issue throughout the country and especially here in South Florida. I'm Zelalem Adefris. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at Panelists Miami. And I came to Miami from Atlanta in 2016 to build out the climate justice work, which was fairly new at our organization, which is a local nonprofit. And so I'm telling you this little story just to prep for this panel. So bear with me. So in my first kind of like few months in Miami in 2016, primarily spent most days just meeting with community members in all different neighborhoods in Miami and just hearing stories to learn about how climate change impacts our communities. And it became very clear that the climate crisis, of which Miami is known as ground zero, one of the ground zero places in the world for climate change, was just as pressing as the affordable housing crisis that I think if you live in South Florida, we all know so well. And so these two crises are so permeating that Miami residents came up for a term. Miami residents themselves, don't let anyone tell you differently, it wasn't Harvard, about a term that describes the convergence of these two crises, and it's called climate gentrification. And climate gentrification, which you'll hear a lot more and get much more specific definitions from our speakers, but simply put, it's in my opinion, it's the displacement that occurs when South Florida's primarily Black and immigrant communities who are actually forced to live on these high ground non-coastal areas due to Jim Crow and discriminatory lending practices by banks that happened in the years after and still happen today. They built beautiful communities in these more central high ground areas of the county and of our region. And now these beautiful communities are being eyed by developers as very valuable as our coastal communities and properties are being threatened by sea level rise. So anyways, we'll get into more nuanced definitions, but I'm honored to be joined by two panelists who I'm so grateful to be organizing with here in Miami and who are on the front lines of advocacy and leadership in addressing climate gentrification here. So we have Francois Uhuru Alexandre, who's the CEO of Conscious Contractors. And we have Denise Ghartey, who's a Justice Catalyst Fellow at a Community Justice Project. So what I'll have them do, because I want you all to hear as much from them as possible, I'm gonna have each of them introduce themselves. And then if you can introduce yourself, tell them like a little bit about who you are, what you do, and also if you could share like, what is your definition of climate gentrification? And if it's the same as the one I gave, you know, if there are any caveats or anything specific things you would emphasize, right? So with that, I'll kick it off to Denise first, and then we'll pass it to Francois.
Hey everyone, thanks Zelalem for the introduction. My name is Denise Ghartey. My pronouns are she and her, and I work with the Community Justice Project. So I'm an attorney and Justice Catalyst Fellow here with CJP. And for anyone who doesn't know, CJP is a group of lawyers and artists and writers who believe that social change can only happen when directly impacted communities organize and shift power. So our goal as a group of, like I said, attorneys and artists and people with a lot of different skills and practices, we come together to help these ecosystems of people shift power. And so that means we work on like a lot of different issues. I primarily focus on housing and climate gentrification, and housing as like a big bubble, but there are a lot of things that go into that. But we also work on immigration issues, on like with workers who are fighting for living wages. We work with renters and mobile homeowners and people that are trying to recover from natural disasters. And you know, we also have a strict focus on racial justice and eradicating and working towards more racial justice and focusing on white supremacy and in our system and other systems of oppression that impact low-income Black and Brown communities. So that's kind of CJP. And like I said, my work is mostly with housing and climate gentrification, which is why I'm on this panel here with y'all today. And I would say, yeah, Zelalem, my definition is very similar to yours. And I guess in addition, I like to add the systems. I know there was a speaker earlier that was talking a lot about the redlining and how that history is still impacting Black communities today. But I would even go deeper and more specific into Miami and how particular parts of our current zoning code also impact climate gentrification and the displacement of people, and how disinvested in communities and landlords and lackluster tenant protection policies have impacted homeowners and tenants all across the state of Florida, and really impact displacement of low-income communities as well. So I guess I'll just put that there, and we'll come back to it, and I will pass it on. Yeah.
Thank you, Denise. Francois, would you mind introducing yourself and answering the same question about your definition? I think you may be muted.
Still getting used to Zoom.
Got it. Perfect. We can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Zelalem, for taking the time to have the discussion. Denise, how are you doing? I'm glad to be on this panel with you all. And thank you. Thank you for this invitation. Thank you to Cornell as well. So my name is Francois Alexandre, and I am the co-founder and the CEO of Conscious Contractors, which is a company that was founded, I would say now 4 years ago in the wake of Hurricane Irma. And as a longtime activist in the community, and also someone who is also a survivor of police brutality, you know, I know very well what the definition of climate gentrification is. And you're 100% right, Zelalem. It's not the Harvard definition of the professor or whatever that guy who put out a study. You know, it's Miss Paulette from Liberty City, who understood it, not from from an academic perspective, even if you'd say that the credentials aren't there, but this is a woman who was conscious enough of her environment and looking at the changes, not just climate change, but the realization that migration or forced migration is happening on the back of climate change, right? That people are actually paying more attention to how they're purchasing property, especially a 30-year investment. You know, you want to make sure that you do it well. So it was her who came up with that term for us here in Miami, especially in District 5, Liberty City, and so forth. So that's my 2 cents to that. And my background is I graduated from the local university here, Florida International University. My background is international relations and a minor in mass communication. And prior to starting this company called Conscious Contractors, I was well involved in the nonprofit community with multiple organizations. One of them is Catalyst Miami, who help shape my knowledge around climate change. Also, you know, shout out to Michael Clarkson in helping do so. But it's those two combinations that helps me understand my community through the impact of climate change and so forth. And that's what Conscious Contractor is. we are a consulting construction company striving to build a cooperative that built the best and serve the best interests of the community through construction, through bringing green energy, talking about solar, and really just looking at the materials of how we build now, especially looking at my situation. We serve the community of Little Haiti. And as we know now, District 5 is going through the biggest transformation it's ever seen, not just in Little Haiti, but there's a lot of developments that are coming here. We're not, and our proximity to the ocean is not far. On any giving at 6:30 in the morning, you can feel the breeze of the wet ocean in your face. But if these buildings come in and they're hardcore concrete jungles, they're not going to be able to not only fit in the community, but advance the footprint and the carbon footprint of the community. So thank you for being here. I'm excited, willing to go.
Thank you both. You shared a little bit, both of you, but I'm wondering if you can dive a little bit deeper in how your organizations address climate gentrification, especially now, like, you know, in this past year with the added crises of the coronavirus pandemic and the economic crisis so many of our households face.
Right.
I'll let whoever wants to take it go first.
I'll let Denise go.
Thank you. So I guess for me, what I would like to do is kind of highlight the work of some of our community partners. The first being the Family Action Network Movement, FAM, based in Little Haiti. For many years now, they've been engaged in a fight against the mega developments that have been going up in Little Haiti. And while there are many asks and many things that need to happen to make sure that communities are protected when big developments go up and speculation and property prices are rising, there are particular tools in the City of Miami's zoning code that makes it a lot easier for big developments to go up, particularly a mechanism called the Special Area Plan, SAPs. So for many years now, CJP has been working with FAM, and FAM has worked with a lot of different organizations in the community to kind of highlight what SAPs are doing. And for anyone who doesn't know, like a very, very basic breakdown is that if you have more than, if there's a developer and they have more than 9 contiguous acres of land, they can submit an application for something called a special area plan, which would allow them to apply for a lot of bonus massing and density to a project that is in a particular area where the zoning code and the land use map in that area would not allow for, maybe because it's a largely residential area and they want to put commercial and hotel and, you know, condos and whatnot. And usually that would take a really long time. You'd have to go through multiple iterations of an application. But with this mechanism and a lot more technical things, but with this mechanism called the Special Area Plan, developers are able to say, I have this 9 contiguous acres. I want to, instead of only being able to build up to 5 stories or 8 stories so that it's in compliance with what the rest of the neighborhood looks like, I want to build 25 stories. Or I want to build, 28 stories and have hotels and commercial and stuff like that. And for that, to be able to do that, developers are supposed to be able to provide some sort of community benefits in exchange for the benefits they're getting in massing and density. So a lot of these SAPs have been popping up in Little Haiti. And Little Haiti happens to sit on some of the highest elevation land in the city of Miami. And so FAM for many years has been fighting for more recognition of climate gentrification, fighting against developments going up that don't have adequate community benefits, and really just trying to change the narrative around community displacement in Little Haiti, and also now in Alapata and in Liberty City and in Overtown, and highlight some of the the failures of particular mechanisms in the city's zoning code, but also I think on like a really like big level, these are, as Zelalem said, these are communities that because of racist policies in the past have been segregated away from the coast and have created beautiful enclaves for themselves. And now, because of climate change and property prices dropping closer to the coast and property prices rising on higher elevation lands, this climate change has been drastically exacerbating the amount of developments that are coming and speculation and the prices of rent and homeownership in these communities. So CJP has worked a lot with FAM on that, and I would think, and I think on outside of, you know, a zoning and on like a mass scale, we also do a lot of work on, especially right now during the pandemic, really trying to help folks who are at whose housing is not stable and who are facing eviction. And I think that that's really important because a lot of people have really terrible conditions issues in their apartments. And these conditions issues, again, are really exacerbated by the increasing amount of severe weather events that we've been having and that we can see all across the country. So I don't only think that and this is why so many really pointed or specific definitions really don't get at the root cause of what's really going on, because, you know, if your roof is caving in and you're scared to stay in your house during a hurricane, you don't feel safe in your home. And I think not only are you afraid to be evicted to tell your landlord about that, and not only right now during COVID, may you not have enough money to pay your rent, and you're scared to say you're afraid to be in your home and that the conditions are bad, but I think that there's also a mental health component to displacement and eviction that no one talks about. And it's traumatic. And I think evictions and displacement are violent. And I think we need to kind of sometimes now really start to understand what's going on as violent, and that it's like state sanctioned violence against people on another level, especially when the final arbiter of an eviction or forced removal of people from their homes and communities is the police as well. So I'll stop there and say, like, those are kind of two places where I think we are working on displacement, climate gentrification, and just providing more stable, affordable housing to folks. But we say, as part of the Florida Housing Justice Alliance, as well, as that housing is a human right. And we need to take this out of, I think there's a human dignity component to this. And if we can't see people as deserving of a stable, safe place to stay, and we don't think that that's the government's or whoever we are, our responsibility to help provide that, then I think something's wrong with the way we're functioning as a society.
Thank you, Denise. Mic drop. Definitely. Francois, I'll pass it to you. What is Conscious Contractors doing to address climate gentrification, especially during coronavirus and all the compounding crises we've had in the past year? Oh, mute again. The mute.
That's why I made sure she went first so she could drop the mic, drop the gems. Great job, Denise. I appreciate it. One thing that Denise said that was very important is the fact is not looking at climate gentrification through a definition, but is really looking at it through a circular lens of multiple angles that really gives you and define what climate gentrification is. And Zelalem, if you can, and hopefully the folks that are on here, they can look at some of the videos, some of the work that you and I have done with PBS. Also, Al Jazeera did a great job, and really looking at the mass influx of what's happening from low level to high level, as far as it increased the sea level rise. So people can get the understanding of what's really happening in our community, and how majority of communities such as Liberty City, Overtown, Little Haiti, TIET, Wynwood, Midtown, how they're completely changed, and how you're looking at that aspect saying, wow, I can't buy a house no more that used to be cost $30,000 or $50,000. Now they're costing $500,000 due to the fact that people are moving inland, you know. And the conscious contractors, and I like to go back to that, is because we understood what climate gentrification meant in the face of a disaster, let alone a man-made social engineered impact of displacement and upliftment of culture and a rage amount of mental health and also physical health upon our people. We knew what it was. We knew that our population in TIET was an elderly population. Majority of them are US citizens and they own their homes. And we also know that they also didn't work long enough to even get the 40 hours, not necessarily hours, but 40 credit to retirement. So therefore their income is at a very all-time low. So which means they can't keep up with their property. And what we did as conscious contractors with our inception with FARM, in collaboration with FARM giving us a great van, we just took to the streets. And what we wanted to do, knowing that there's predators knocking on everybody's door, we wanted to make sure that we can keep people in their homes. So we started boarding up properties. Every property was someone of elderly or somebody that was disabled. And we did that not only through TIET, but all of District 5 and even in Broward County, making sure that when Irma hit, that these people, like their homes weren't gonna be broken or anything else. Given the fact that it already needed the help, it needs to be renovated and so forth. So instead of somebody coming to knock on their door and buying the property, we make sure that we boarded it up. And after Irma, any trees that fell around their houses was picked up by conscious contractors, and also the home renovations we picked up to do through a green lens of having a greener eco community. So majority of the work that we have been doing from essence of 3 or 4 years ago is mitigating the impact of climate gentrification. And then going into COVID, majority of our work are hands-on. We did some work on Zoom, but majority of our program, we have 9 programs, they're all hands-on. So COVID really kind of pushed us back, but at the same time, our effort in being a frontline activist and being a frontline provider of first responder, we knew that we had to go out there. So way before COVID hit, by January, we was already getting masks because we had a friend from China who lived there and was already telling us what's going on. And by the time you know it, we connected with Third Wave Volunteer and we hit the street running. What we did is make sure that everybody had masks and we had food distribution throughout the Tri-County since March. And we're still doing so as we speak. So we also did that in collaboration with folks like FARM, CJP, and just the whole community network, because in order to combat climate gentrification, you can't do it from an isolated position. You have to be able to bring community together and bring the organizations together to help not adopt, but mitigate to the aspect of climate change itself and climate gentrification as it relates to developments that are out of scale and does not fit in our community.
Thank you, Francois. Okay, now we've learned a lot about what your organizations do, and I'm sure people on the call are interested in what they can do to address climate gentrification. And I know we have, several sectors and people coming from different perspectives. So I was wondering what you think government and institutions like banks in particular can do to address climate gentrification.
Okay, so climate gentrification doesn't just happen to any neighborhood. So the community, the community would already been in an area by what the city is considered slum and blight. And then with the last president, majority of these communities became what they call opportunity zones. And so there's a lot of ways in which you can carve up the community by where if you're an investor, you're this, you're that. So that's why you see multiple corporations buying up property here and there. But at the heart of that, when it comes to building community and rebuilding community, there are certain institutions you need to be able to do that. So when it comes to the banks, a CRA, just like Cornell's company, or even in my community, the CDC, Community Development Corporation, they are very vital when it comes to the economic development of a community that is transforming right before your eyes. So the banks, in which what I've come to realize and understand when it comes to just the entire nature, the climate of the nation itself, when it comes to understanding what the next vision for that people is bringing forth. And one of it is banks investing in local communities, not just in big national corporations in which they've done, but a lot of them have looked at community as a sense of investment to do so. So I would highly recommend. I think that already JP Morgan Chase is doing such. They're not giving enough, but I wish they would. But they are giving that, they are already engaged with certain partners in our community. The CDC is one, and I know some other organizations that are looking at banking and financing affordable housing, and not necessarily having to have much of that interest rate coming back on us.
Thank you, Francois. Denise, do you have anything to add? Even for government too, banks and government?
Yeah, I would say for government, we're entering our legislative session, and last year, Zelalem, you'll remember this. It was the first year we had the Tenants Bill of Rights, and this was largely the Tenant Bill of Rights was largely led by a coalition of community groups all across Florida under the Florida Housing Justice Alliance. And included in that Tenant Bill of Rights were a lot of different protections that we wanted to get for tenants, but included in that was a bill for an eviction moratorium during states of emergency. And the reason, the way that bill came about and why the community thought that was important was like Francois was saying, after Irma, the community got together and made a list of demands that they wanted to see to help better protect themselves if the city and the state was ever hit by another natural disaster. And they were demanding and requested an eviction moratorium. And then I think in 2019, it was very popular. In the news, there was a picture and a story about an older woman who was evicted the day before, I think it was Michael, was supposed to make landfall. And there was the picture of the police moving an older woman out of her home. And here it was really important for folks to advocate and say, when there is a natural disaster and the streets are flooded, you don't have electricity, there's no water, there's no food, you don't know where to go. How are you supposed to show up in court? A lot of landlords don't even live in the state of Florida, and they're like, you miss your rent, I'm evicting you. Courts, sometimes some close for a little bit, but then courts will open back up and then it's business as usual. And we all know that all communities don't recover from natural disasters at the same rate, and that not everyone has all of the resources to get back to a place where they can start dealing with things like their landlord trying to kick them out of their apartments, even sometimes when there's still an active state of emergency. So right now, what you can do is support this bill again, which Senator Pizzo has decided to bring back in front of the legislature again this year. I've been trying to find it. Here it is. It's SB 1548. Bill SB 1548 is Senator Pizzo's bill to institute an eviction moratorium during states of emergency, which means that the minute the governor says that we are under a state of emergency, and for example, even if it wasn't for a hurricane, if it was for, let's say, a pandemic, if this bill was passed last year, there wouldn't have been an eviction moratorium for everyone in the state of Florida in March until now, until the state said we're not in a state of emergency anymore. But the bill wasn't passed. I think it died in the second committee. So that is a really important step. And it's really important because landlord-tenant laws in Florida really do not protect tenants at all. And the eviction process moves so fast, and you can be out within 2 weeks without even getting a hearing, without talking to a judge, without being able to tell your story. And when you're dealing with matters of life and death, when there's a natural disaster or a pandemic like we're in now, dealing with the aggravated factor of someone also trying to kick you out of your home, which is just another trauma on top of a list of oppressions and systems that are failing you. It's just too much, and that should not be happening. So I would say what you can do is support this bill. I will say it again. Let me just get it back up on my screen. SB 1548. And also you can look, there's a lot more bills. In particular, I guess Zelalem is okay. I can read like 1 or 2 of them off. Yeah, okay. There's another bill, HB 603, which protects from retaliatory conduct by landlords. And there is another bill, SB 576, which says that your landlord cannot discriminate against you if you were evicted during COVID, which is a fear for a lot of people that we're all suffering through a pandemic and loss of jobs because, again, the systems are failing us and people's credit history, and it's just a lot harder to rent if you have an eviction on your record. And now because of COVID, a lot more people are gonna have evictions on their record. It's gonna be a lot harder for them to be placed into other units. And there's also a bill, I can't find it right now, but there's another bill to kind of revise the rent registry deposit statute, which is a huge barrier for tenants because it says, unless you're able to provide the court in a court registry, into the court registry, the total amount of money that your landlord is claiming that you owe them, you do not have a right to a hearing, and you do not have a right to tell your side of the story to the judge. And the landlord can file a motion to default if you don't pay all this money, and you could be out. And so now people are faced with back rent, $10,000, $13,000. You know, some people haven't been able to pay their rent since March. So depositing all that money into the rent registry is just not a possibility. So there are a lot of people that have been impacted by COVID once this moratorium is lifted that will not be able to pay into the court registry. And that means they won't be able to argue for more time or to stay in the unit and to get more supports. And I also think last policy request, and Miami Worker Center has worked a lot on this, and they have members who've spoken about this at the county level, is to add some sort of requirement that when rental assistance goes out, landlords are not able to move forward with evictions that they've already filed. In some cases, landlords are getting rental assistance and then turning around and evicting tenants immediately. And this rental assistance money is supposed to help people stay in their homes. So adding some requirements when getting rental assistance, that landlords will have to either dismiss a case if it's already filed or agree to not file a case for a particular amount of time. But those are ways to support and keep people in their homes during this crisis and others. But those are like immediate legislative items.
Thank you, Denise.
One more thing. You know, as we think about this, we also must think about how we build and continue to build community through these transformation. And just going back to the bank, if we had a CDFI institution that was just focused on community, like affordable housing, we're talking about decent affordable housing at not the AMI we're looking at now, but if we're talking about extreme low income ELI, you know, that would work. And then it's one thing to, and those are really good bills to make sure that in a climate, you know, disaster or pandemic that we're secured. But when it comes to the mitigation of climate gentrification itself, with government, you know, government needs to pay more attention. Government needs to make sure that they can respect the dignity of the communities that makes up of District 5 or the city of Miami. FIU did a study in regards to that, given the fact, saying that these communities are what makes up the city. And when it comes to Miami 21, that's something that we need to take a look at, because government has a say-so in how development is coming in. So we need to make sure that government is held accountable, and at the same time are able to bring down the funds that is needed to support affordable housing. One example is a project in which I think that would benefit the community. But if you're looking at the amount of funding they need, whether it's $20 million or $5 million, we should be going to the city asking for that funds, in which, there are funding for that. Where you're looking at the Miami Forever bond that was passed a couple of years ago, in which $100 million of it was allocated to affordable housing. Some of that money has already been divided between commissioners, but yet they're stuck somewhere in limbo and not being able to come down to the community. And if you're also looking at market rate when it comes to construction, the money in which that's already allocated may not even be enough to mitigate the lack of affordable housing that the city of Miami is already falling behind. So, but I think that there are answers with having to make sure having the right representative and also bringing the right solutions to the table, which is that's where we're at.
Thank you, Francois. I'm going to add one more thing. I think we talked a lot about like the investments that we need to make in our communities, whether it's policy or, monetary investments. And I've, since July of last year, June of last year, I've had the rallying cry from Minneapolis in my head, right? Like, how can we divest from systems that harm us and invest in those that heal us? And because Francois, you mentioned JP Morgan Chase, he was doing a great job at investing in great things in our community. I'll also mention that they are the top investor in fossil fuels. And so that divest piece on how do we move those funds that are so heavily invested in fossil fuels in a major way, for any institution, into affordable housing, or into anything that benefits our community, instead of contributing to the climate crisis, would be my rallying cry. But all right, we are gonna switch to audience questions. So I encourage you to please write your questions in the chat. And so in the meantime, while you're brainstorming those, I'll ask one more. I know we have like nonprofit representatives, high school students, community members also on this call. So I'm wondering, how do you think they can get involved in addressing climate gentrification? And if you have any advice, for people new to this topic that want to advocate.
So one way, especially speaking to the youth, because not only they have the answers to solving a lot of climate crises we have, but they're also going to inherit any solutions that we think of or even left behind. So the important thing is speaking to the youth. And for us as conscious contractors, there are 3 of our programs that are focused into making sure that these youth, whether you're in elementary all the way to high school, understand the impact of climate change and climate gentrification in your neighborhood. So one of the programs we do is a Clean Street, Clean Mind program, right? And it's Clean Street, Clean Mind. And especially in our what we call low income marginalized communities, one of our problems is that, yeah, we're not accessible as far as the accessibility to government, but at the same time, our communities can be built and we can rebuild it with ourselves. So in my community, when I go to a street and I see it's dirty, I pull a team together and I clean it up. The city of Miami does have a beautification program in which we're tapped into. So anytime we're in the community cleaning, you'll see that the city of Miami would help us, would assist us in making sure that there are garbage bags and there are also the garbage truck that could pick it up. So one way of understanding climate change itself before we understand how it becomes into a gentrification by where you're being uplifted into uplifting your culture and everything else you used to know somewhere else. It's really understanding the impact of climate change first for us. And so we're hands-on when it comes to cleaning the streets. We're also hands-on when it comes to the arts, of making sure that they understand what climate change is And so within the last 3 years, we've also had a yearly program called the 1804 Youth Art Contest. It's an art contest by where they have to describe and define what climate change is, and then also come up with a supervillain or a hero to combat that. And it's awesome. It's beautiful to see the kids, especially kids of District 5 and other neighborhood schools in which we was engaged in making sure that this event happened. It was incredible to see the seniors that are really artists, but come to life to explain to you what climate change is, and also with understanding the resilient aspect of a community like TIET, like Little Overtown and Little Haiti, and understanding the resilient aspect of 1804 and what it means to be what it means to be free, and that it means to have liberation and independence.
Mic drop. No. Yeah, I don't know if I have more to say other than, I guess, I listened to a little bit of the previous panel, and I think for example, like Stevie was on that, talking about how like young people can get more involved. And I guess I'll piggyback on what they said and what I heard from them, because I think it was really good suggestions about joining, taking some of the Catalyst classes, Clear and Heal. I went to those classes. I think that those are great community classes. Then I've met a lot of people, and I know a lot of people who have attended and have joined that network. And I also think just getting involved in your local community groups that are either membership holding or, like Francois said, doing particular work. And you know, there's Miami Worker Center that's doing a lot of work in the community and in housing. There's FAM, that, you know, and the Little Haiti Advisory Group. There's Catalyst and their classes. There's Miami Tenants Union. And I think that there's, you know, Miami Climate Alliance, Zelalem, we could talk about that. There are a lot of places that even if you don't, I know sometimes for folks, time commitments, if this isn't work that you're planning on, you know, jumping in and just like delving completely into it, and, you know, you have other stuff that's going on. I think that there are a lot of places that you can come in, dip your toe in, see what the community's like, start making some relationships, start talking with people, and then getting into it and seeing how deep you want to go in and how much you want to contribute. And I think that there are spaces for everybody with different varying levels of ability to be involved. And I think that the people you may not know, but you have a lot of different skills no matter what field you're in, no matter what you've done before. And I think, you know, I always believe, and there's a new book by Marian Kaba saying, we do this till we free us. And I believe in like freedom dreaming and future dreaming, and that, you know, we need us all in order to get out of this struggle. And I think if you don't know what it's like to be in communities like this and to do this type of work, just come and like talk to somebody. It's like 50% relationships, like, and then like doing the work behind the scenes, and then like just trying to move and respond to things that are happening, right? So first step is, you know, coming to this and you're listening to us talk, and then figure out who's close to you, what's your easiest kind of nexus to get introduced and start creating those relationships and having some natural conversations. And then you'll start learning a lot, and you'll come into the community. And you can start figuring out like where your niche is, where you're most needed. Are you an artist? Do you have computer skills? Do you have a car? Do you have access to bikes? I'm saying there are people with some resources, and I'm like, come my way, come talk to me, because we can use what you got. And I think, you know what I mean? And do you like to write? Do you like to make things? There's just so many ways to get involved, even outside doing some of the more concrete things, like we were saying, like legislative advocacy. But it's really like, you know, move up however you can, or show up however is most comfortable for you. And then you can start figuring out how you can challenge yourself more if it's something you're passionate about. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo the strength and the unification, the network, especially around climate change. Because I mean, I'm gonna be real, we're conscious contractors, we're really big on climate change, climate gentrification, and just the application of it, period, and building exactly what you just talked about, Denise, building a community by where we can use all of these tools and professions to build something what we want to see. And yes, in order to be free, we have to dream, you know, and that is so important. So I want to highlight that, because for us, I could just be sitting here and I get an email from Calais, Miami saying that there's a student at FIU who wants to talk to us, you know, who actually want to apply our work into their program, like their homework, you know. And we've gotten to be in a lot of academic journals because of this network from Miami Climate Alliance, Miami Workers Center, just the whole network of folks who want to make sure that we can filter the information, whether or not that you're a high school student or you're a college student, and you're going to need to get to the work. So any hands-on, they already know, as conscious contractors or CJP or Catalyst. And I just want to really much highlight that, and thank you all for that.
Thank you both for the wonderful advice. We have a couple of questions in the chat from the audience, and I encourage audience members to submit while you can, because we only have a handful of minutes left for the panel. But I'll shoot the first one over to whoever wants to answer it. So this question from John Clark says, if ultimately larger developments proceed, what types of programs or projects would you advocate for in a community benefits agreement in Little Haiti?
I'll take that.
Go ahead, go.
You know, as an activist and as somebody that's a revolutionary at heart, when it comes to the betterment and the self-determination and the community control of our environment, when you have a government who doesn't check people at the front, then you get to deal with the back end. And when you're at the front saying no, you also have to make sure you understand that you could be at the table also saying no to the things in which at this point in time you can't stop, but you want to make sure. That's why we don't adapt, we mitigate. So if somebody like Magic City is coming in here saying that they will protect and preserve the culture for you, you say no, because you want the people who built the community to keep preserving their own culture. And a community benefit agreement that allows you to even change the facade of a community, and also the art that's even inside the building, and so forth. I believe that a benefit community agreement should be of the community, for the community, by the community, and overall with all the organizations within the community. The problem is they got us stuck in a bucket, and we're crabs in a bucket, and not understanding the vision of the vitality of the community itself when it comes to 10 years to 15 years down the line. You know, for me, that comes from that I'm IEC, I'm from TIET. I see, and I have the foresight of seeing what Wynwood is in TIET. And without economic development, there is going to be nothing but outside people coming here to build the mom and pop business that we had from the beginning that didn't get the support, whether it was from community or other organizations in the community that has failed us. So for me, I believe that government should already have the strong stipulations to make sure that when developer does come into the community, they are coming with a set of vision that has us involved into it, not necessarily saying that this is a rental property and this is what we're going to give you. We can't give you affordable housing on site. We can't give you workforce housing on site. And anybody who's going to live in is going to be earning $72,000 a year, while you know the community make less than $10,000, depending on the population and who's on there. So we don't have the young people in office. We don't have the people who are living in the community to make sure that they can advocate for the community. Majority of people or organizations you have are what they call out of place. They're not within community enough to understand the nitty-gritty of the community, not just understanding the community benefit agreements as it relates to big development, but looking at the community entirely and figuring out a different vision, knowing that there will be change. You know, whether it's the infrastructure, whether it's the housing, whether it's the light, you know, or whether it's the speed bump we need to put in our community to slow people down, so because our kids can have a better chance at living. So I also don't never want to put that much weight on somebody that the government had let in our house, because they're always going to tell you that they're not here to solve all of our problems. But if we can understand where this is coming from, to understand, okay, we need to sit with development, but we also need the right representation in office to make sure that we have a fighting chance when we get to the table, or if not, we build our own table. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think right now, the way that the policies are set up, they bring the community in at the tail end of a deal that's taken 3 years to make already. So how is there real community involvement if you're only allowing for real community participation, or bringing it to a particular board where now all the documents are made public only 2 years after you've started hashing it out with the planning department in the city about all the things that you were going to give? And I also think that when you see, if you have particular land that you want to develop in a particular neighborhood and there are no requirements that are put on that land at the outset, and you just think you can do whatever you want and you're going to create whatever benefits you think are best for you, then also, just like Francois said, like that's not real community participation. And I agree. There needs to be, and I think that goes back to what Miami, like that goes back to Miami 21. And that goes back to, when do you bring the community to the table? It's in the beginning. And you don't, and I think it's in the beginning, and you don't start at zero. The community gets to make, for whether it's zip code based, whether it's district based, if you want to build in this area outside, or if you want to use a particular mechanism, you need to, at a base level, agree to a minimum amount of this, a minimum amount of this, a minimum amount of this. If you can't get down with that, then you're not going to build here, period. Right. Then you don't get to. That's not negotiable. And we get to come to the table and ask for more. And then maybe we negotiate. But there's a base level of things that you have to do. And I think it's not just money and resources, affordable housing. And I think extremely low income, ELI housing, affordable housing, and workforce housing, right? So I mean, housing that's based 30% of income, housing that's below 60% AMI, and then workforce housing that's between 60% and 140% AMI. And usually with the way that the agreements are set up now, if you're in workforce housing and the development says that they will provide between 80% and 140% as the workforce housing price, they get to choose how many units they provide at between 80% and 140%. So what most developers are doing is they're providing all the units at 140% AMI. Right. And for anyone who doesn't know, 140% AMI is for one person making approximately $90,000 a year. And that's supposed to be some of their affordable units for the community. That's not, who's gonna, not me? I don't live there, right? So, and I don't know. So I think it's, I agree. It's just, you need to go all the way back. We need to take so many steps back. we need to bring community to government. Come on. We need to be able to not say development to community, but community to development. Mm-hmm. By where, that's exactly. It. Exactly. People, we were just talking about, disinvested in communities and not building up, and people being nervous about, the conditions of their housing and whatnot and so forth. Like, yeah, people, I want nice stuff in my community. I want nice things. I don't want to be worried about my roof. I don't want there to be like a dump and people to be like putting their trash in this lot. I want the lot to be clean. Yes. I would like to make sure that my shops can stay and that they look nice and they have pretty awnings and stuff. I want that. But what I don't want is to not afford to live here after you bring that. So that's not wild. I don't think that's out of the realm of things to ask for. No. But what we know that happens is, even like Francois said, you keep the art, or you say, we're going to make sure that the culture stays. Yeah, you're going to keep the culture, but you're going to get rid of me. And like, what I need you to, I'm a human being that lives here, and I get the respect, not just, this abstract form and the culture that I'm leaving behind that I took a long time to create. I deserve to stay as a person. And that's the humanity point in it. You don't see low income Black and brown people. We're not real people. And like, you need to see us, and we deserve to stay.
With that mic drop, thank you both. We're out of time. I wish we could continue, but Thank you both for the powerful statements, and I hope everyone will be able to connect with you after. So thank you so much to Cornell, to the CRA of South Florida team. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, applause all around in the chat.